Jin sat at his desk surrounded by books and papers. His small office at the university was quiet except for the hum of his computer. On the screen was his life's work, his doctoral thesis. It was about the shapes and sounds of the oldest human languages. He was trying to find patterns that connected them all. It was a difficult task, and his big presentation to the professors was only a week away. He felt stressed and tired. He stood up and walked to the window. The campus below was green and peaceful. Students walked to their classes, talking and laughing. It was a normal day. Then the sky changed. It started as a low rumble that you could feel in your bones more than hear with your ears. The birds stopped singing. The people on the paths below stopped walking and looked up. Jin leaned closer to the glass. At first he saw nothing. Then massive shapes began to block out the sun. They were not airplanes. They were not anything he had ever seen. They were huge ships, dark and smooth like stones from a river, but as big as mountains. They moved without sound, gliding through the sky as if it were water. They did not fly fast. They moved with a slow, terrible purpose. One by one, they took positions high above the city. They did not land. They just hung there in the sky, silent and watching. The world held its breath. Jin's phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again and again. News alerts flashed on the screen. Unknown objects in the sky. Global event. Stay calm. He saw the same thing happening on every screen in the building across the way. The whole world was seeing this at the same time. For days, nothing happened. The ships just stayed there. Life tried to go back to normal, but it was a nervous normal. People went to work, but they looked up at the sky often. The news talked about nothing else. World leaders made speeches, but they had no answers. They did not know who was in the ships or what they wanted. The silence from the ships was the most frightening thing. Then, 2 weeks after they arrived, every screen on Earth lit up at the same time. Televisions, computers, phones, giant billboards in city squares. They all showed the same image. It was a creature. It was tall and had a hard, shiny exterior that looked like dark shell. It had several large black eyes that did not blink. It did not look like any animal on Earth. Its face had no expression. A voice came from the screens. It was a flat computer-made voice. It spoke in perfect Korean, but everyone on Earth heard it in their own language. People of Earth, the voice said. We are the Cathar Imperium. We have observed your world. We have measured your technology, your societies, and your military power. The creature on the screen did not move. The voice continued, calm and sure. You have been classified as a pre-collective Tier 3 species. Your development is primitive. Your energy weapons are simple. Your space travel is limited to your own solar system. Your attempts at global unity are weak. Jin felt a cold knot form in his stomach. They were being judged, and they had been found lacking. This planet is now a protectorate of the Cathar Imperium, the voice stated. It was not a request. It was a fact. You will comply with our directives. Your leaders will receive instructions. There is no need for conflict. Your forces are no threat to us. Resistance would be illogical and aesthetically displeasing. The screen went black. The silence that followed was louder than any explosion. In the days after the message, the world changed. The governments of Earth tried to talk to the Cathar. Their messages were ignored. Military jets were sent to fly near the ships. They did nothing. The ships did not react. They did not fire weapons. They did not need to. Their silent presence was power enough. Jin tried to focus on his work, but it was hard. The shadow in the sky was a constant reminder that his world was no longer his own. His thesis on ancient sounds felt small and useless. One evening he was in his office watching the news. They were replaying the Cathar message for the 1,000th time. Experts were talking about the ship's power sources, their materials, their possible weapons. But Jin was not listening to the words. He was a student of language. He listened to the sound. He leaned closer to his speaker. There was something under the flat computer voice, a faint, almost musical tone, a resonance. It was so quiet you could easily miss it. He thought it was a problem with his speakers at first. He found a clean recording of the message online and pulled it into his sound analysis software. He filtered out the main voice. He played with the frequencies. There it was, a clear, complex harmonic wave, woven underneath the speech like a thread of silver in a dark cloth. It was beautiful and strange. It was not a natural sound. It was made. It was a part of their technology, or maybe their language. His heart beat faster. This was not a military problem. This was a language problem. He grabbed his phone and called his professor, an older woman named Lee. Professor Lee was the head of the Department of Metaphysical Linguistics. Many people thought her work was strange. She studied the sounds of ancient stones and the possible languages of long-lost human cultures. "Professor Lee," Jin said, his voice excited. "It's Jin. I need you to look at something. I think I found something in their message." An hour later, he was in Professor Lee's cluttered office. Maps of ancient sites were pinned to the walls. Strange, swirling symbols were drawn on her whiteboard. She listened carefully as Jin showed her the sound wave on his laptop. "Listen to this frequency, Professor," he said, playing the purified tone. Professor Lee, a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and gray hair, closed her eyes and listened. She did not speak for a long time. Then she opened her eyes and turned to her own computer. "I have heard this before," she said quietly. "What? Where?" Jin asked. Professor Lee pulled up files of her own research. They were sound maps, visual representations of vibrations. One was from a stone chamber in Ireland. Another was from a temple in Malta. A third was from an ancient Korean dolmen, a tomb made of giant stones. "These sites," she said, pointing at the screen, "they all have a resonance. A vibration that is part of their structure. For years I thought it was just a curiosity, a result of their construction. But look." She laid the sound wave from the Cathar message next to the sound wave from the Korean dolmen. The patterns were not identical, but they were similar. They shared a common complex mathematical structure, a hidden geometry of sound. Jin stared, his mouth open. "What does it mean?" Professor Lee looked from the ancient stone pattern to the alien message on the screen. Her face was very serious. "It means, Jin, that they were wrong," she said. "They think we are primitive. But our oldest ancestors, our most ancient academics who built with stone, they knew something. They understood a piece of the universe that we forgot." She looked out the window at the dark shape of the alien ship hanging in the twilight sky. "And if I am right," she whispered, "they may have just given us the key to understanding our new masters." The silence in Professor Lee's office was heavy. The hum of the computer fan was the only sound. Jin stared at the two sound waves on the screen, one from a cold alien voice, the other from a warm ancient stone. They were cousins. They were part of the same family. "How is this possible?" Jin finally asked. His voice was a whisper. Professor Lee did not look away from the screen. "I do not know how, but I know what it is. I have called it foundation resonance. It is the idea that certain shapes and sounds can touch the basic rules of the universe. The Cathar did not invent this. They simply use it, and so long ago did we." She turned to him, her eyes bright with a fierce light. "This changes everything, Jin. They looked at our guns and our ships and called us primitive. They never looked at our oldest stories, written not in books but in the earth." "We have to tell someone," Jin said. "The government. The military." "No," Professor Lee said sharply. "Not yet." "What would we say? That we think some old rocks and an alien message sound the same? They would not listen. We need proof, real proof." She stood up and began to pace. "We need a team. A small one. People we can trust. This must be a secret." The next day, Professor Lee called two people to a hidden room in the university's science library. The first was Min. Min was a physicist. He was young like Jin, but where Jin was often nervous, Min was calm and sure. He studied the smallest pieces of the universe. The second was Sue. Sue was an engineer. She was practical and quiet. She could build anything. She understood how things worked in the real world. Professor Lee closed the door. She did not use the screen. She spoke in a low voice. "What I will tell you is a secret," she said. "If we are wrong, we look like fools. If we are right, we might change the world." She explained what she and Jin had found. She showed them the sound waves. Min, the physicist, leaned in close. He studied the patterns. "The structure is harmonic, but it is also quantum. It is a vibration that exists in more than 3 dimensions. This is not just sound. This is a key." Sue, the engineer, looked skeptical. "You think this sound can do something? Like a weapon?" "We do not know what it can do," Professor Lee admitted. "But the Cathar use it. It is part of their technology. We think it is the reason their shields are so strong. It holds their ships together. If we can understand it, maybe we can find a weakness." They decided to run an experiment, a small one. They could not use the official labs. It was too dangerous. Someone might ask questions. Sue knew of a place. An old music research lab in the basement of the arts building. It was soundproofed. It was mostly forgotten. They moved their equipment there at night. It was a strange sight. Min's delicate quantum sensors next to Sue's powerful speakers, all set up in a room that smelled of old wood and dust. Their plan was simple. They would try to recreate the resonance from the dolmen stone. They would play the sound and see what it did. The first tests were disappointing. They played the frequencies. Nothing happened. The air did not shimmer. The sensors detected nothing new. The sound is not enough by itself, Min said, looking at his data. It needs a target, something with a stable structure to interact with. Sue brought a small, dense block of a new, very strong metal. It was used in spacecraft. She placed it in the center of the room. "Let us try again," Professor Lee said. Jin started the sound program. The strange low hum filled the room. It was an odd sound. It was not music. It was not noise. It felt old. At first, nothing happened to the metal block. Then Min pointed at his sensor screen. "Look, the atomic bonds, they are vibrating. The structure is becoming less stable." They turned up the power of the speakers. The hum grew louder. Then it happened. The solid metal block did not melt. It did not crack. It simply came apart. The surface of the metal turned into a fine gray dust. It was like watching a sandcastle washed away by a silent wave. In less than a minute, the block was gone. Only a small pile of powder remained on the table. The four of them stared. The only sound was the fading hum from the speakers. Sue was the first to move. She walked slowly to the table. She touched the powder with her finger. It was cool and fine like ash. It unmade it, she whispered. It did not break it. It convinced the metal to forget it was metal. Min was staring at his screen, his face pale. The resonance frequency matched the natural frequency of the atomic bonds in that alloy. It fed energy into the system until the bonds could not hold. They shattered. It turned solid matter back into inert particles. Jin understood the words, but the reality was harder to grasp. They had not used heat or force. They had used a song from a prehistoric stone, and it had erased a piece of advanced metal. Professor Lee looked at the pile of dust. Her face was grim. There was no joy in her eyes, only a heavy understanding. "They were right to be afraid of our past," she said quietly. "We just did not know what our past was." The weight of their discovery settled on them. This was no longer an academic curiosity. They had not found a simple key. They had found a weapon. A terrible, silent, clean weapon. What would they do with this knowledge? Who could they tell? If they gave this to the wrong people, it could be worse than the Cathar. Later that night, Jin sat alone in the basement lab. He looked at the speaker that had produced the sound. It was just a machine, but it had spoken a word that the universe obeyed. He thought about the people who built the dolmen. They had dragged giant stones across the land. They had raised them to the sky. Why, to bury their dead? To mark the seasons? Or did they know on some level that they were writing a message in a language of power, a message that would wait thousands of years to be read? The Cathar looked down from their silent ships. They thought humanity was young and simple. They thought our history was short. They did not know that our oldest teachers were made of stone. And their lessons were just beginning. The pile of gray dust on the table did not move. It was the only thing in the room that was completely still. Jin, Professor Lee, Min, and Sue stood around it. No one spoke for a long time. The air was thick with what they had done. Sue finally broke the silence. Her voice was flat. "That was a military-grade alloy. It is used for the outer shell of our best fighter jets. It is designed to withstand extreme heat and force. And we unmade it with a sound from a Stone Age tomb," Min said. He looked sick. "The power required? It's not about raw energy. It's about precision. It's like finding the one note that can make a glass shatter, but for everything." Professor Lee slowly sat down on an old wooden chair. She looked tired. "We thought we were looking for a key. We have found a sword, a very sharp, very quiet sword." The excitement of discovery was gone. Now they felt the heavy responsibility. They had a secret that could change everything. Or destroy everything. "What do we do now?" Jin asked. He looked at the faces of the others. "We cannot just put this in a research paper." "No," Professor Lee agreed. "We cannot. If we give this to our leaders, they will try to build a bigger version. They will turn it into a bomb. They will start a war we cannot win because we only have a scalpel and they have a hammer. But if we do nothing, the Cathar will keep controlling us, Sue argued. They are already taking our resources. They are on our moon right now, digging it up. What happens when they decide they want more? What happens to the people then? They argued late into the night. They were academics, not soldiers. They did not know how to fight a war. They only knew how to find the truth. The next morning, the decision was made for them. The news showed a live broadcast from Seoul. A large group of people had gathered for a peaceful protest in the city square. They held signs asking for freedom. They asked the Cathar to leave. A single small Cathar drone shaped like a dark metal insect flew down from the mothership. It did not fire a laser. It did not drop a bomb. It hovered over the crowd and emitted a soft, pulsing light. The effect was instant and horrible. The people in the crowd did not scream. They simply collapsed. They fell to the ground, their bodies shaking. They clutched their heads. It was a neural disruptor, a weapon that caused immense pain without killing. It was a message of total control. An ambulance siren wailed in the distance, a sound of helplessness. Jin watched the screen from the lab. He felt a cold anger settle in his stomach. This was not a vague political problem anymore. These were his people, his neighbors, being hurt. We cannot do nothing, he said, turning to the others. His voice was hard. We have to try. Professor Lee nodded slowly, her face grim. You are right. But we still do not know how to fight. We need a soldier. We need a strategist. Who would believe us? Min asked. And who can we trust? Professor Lee thought for a moment. There is a man. General Park. He was forced to retire last year. He said our military was not ready for a threat from the stars. Everyone called him a paranoid old man. Now he looks like a prophet. They found General Park living in a small, simple house on the outskirts of the city. He was an old man with short gray hair and a stern face. He was tending to his vegetable garden when they arrived. He listened to them without saying a word. He did not invite them inside. He just stood in his garden, his hands covered in soil, and listened as Professor Lee explained everything. The sound resonance, the ancient stones, the metal block turning to dust. When she finished, he was silent for a long time. He looked up at the sky, at the dark shape of the Cathar ship. Show me, he said. They took him to the basement lab. They showed him the data. They ran the test again on a small piece of the same metal. General Park watched, his arms crossed, as the solid block quietly dissolved into nothing. He did not look amazed. He looked thoughtful. They think in straight lines, General Park said, his voice a low rumble. Bigger ships. Stronger shields. More power. It is the logic of an empire. He pointed at the speaker. This is not a straight line. This is a circle. This is the kind of thinking that wins wars against empires. He turned to face them. You are academics. You think the truth is enough. It is not. You need a plan. You need a target. You need to speak in a language they understand, the language of power. What is your plan? Jin asked. We will not attack a city, General Park said. We will not try to fight their whole fleet. That is what they expect. That is their game. We will give a demonstration. A single, precise, undeniable demonstration. He looked at each of them. We will take out one of their ships. A small one, a scout. We will use your resonance lance. We will show them that their invincible shield has a hole. We will show them that the primitive humans have a teeth they never saw coming. The team was stunned. It was one thing to dissolve a metal block in a basement. It was another to destroy an alien warship. How? Sue asked. The power required? We would need a massive energy source, a city's worth of power. General Park almost smiled. It was a hard, sharp expression. The Navy has old ships, decommissioned vessels. They have large, old-fashioned nuclear reactors. They are simple. They are offline. No one watches them. We can use one. It was a crazy plan. It was a desperate plan. But it was a plan. That night, under the cover of darkness and using orders that General Park forged with an old soldier's skill, they moved their equipment. They took it to a quiet naval yard. There, sitting in the water, was an old ship. It was not sleek or modern. It was big and gray and sturdy. It was perfect. They turned the main cargo hold into a laboratory. Sue and Min worked day and night, connecting the resonance emitters to the ship's powerful reactor. Jin and Professor Lee refined the sound frequency, making it stronger, more precise, tuned to the specific resonance they had pulled from the Cathar message. They were no longer just researchers. They were soldiers in a secret war, a war of knowledge, a war where the weapon was a song and the battlefield was the fabric of reality itself. The old ship cut through the dark water, its engine a low, steady hum. Inside, the air was tense. Jin wiped sweat from his forehead. The cargo hold was hot from the machinery. Giant speakers built by Sue pointed towards the ceiling. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting them to the ship's powerful nuclear reactor. Min watched the screens, his face lit by the blue glow. The reactor is stable. Power is flowing to the emitters. We are ready. Sue gave a final check to the large dish that would focus the sound. The targeting system is linked. It is as ready as it will ever be. General Park stood in the middle of the room, his hands behind his back. He looked calm, like a rock in a storm. Remember the plan, he said. We are a lost cargo ship. Our transponder is broken. We are drifting. They will see us as garbage, nothing more. Their target was a Cathar scout ship. It was small compared to the motherships, but still larger than their own vessel. It patrolled near Mars, far from Earth. A perfect place for a test. No one would see it happen. For 2 days they sailed. The journey was long and quiet. No one spoke much. They checked their equipment again and again. They slept in short shifts. Jin dreamed of falling stones and silent dust. On the 3rd day, the scout ship appeared on their radar. It was a sharp, angular shape on the screen. It moved with a smooth, arrogant grace. It did not change course. It did not slow down. To the Cathar, the old human ship was not even worth noticing. They are not altering their path, Min said. Their shields are up, but they are at low power. They do not see a threat. Good, General Park said. Let's keep it that way. Bring us to the designated range. So, are you ready? Sue nodded, her hands resting on the controls. Ready. Jin and Professor Lee stood by the main computer. On the screen was the complex sound wave. It was the resonance from the ancient dolmen, made stronger and sharper. It was the song of unmaking. The frequency is locked, Jin said. His throat was dry. The scout ship grew larger on their view screen. It was a dark, silent predator against the blackness of space and the red disk of Mars. In range, Sue announced. General Park took a deep breath. He looked at the faces of the team. The professor, the linguist, the physicist, the engineer. They were not soldiers. But they were the only hope. Fire the resonance lance, he said. Jin pressed the key. There was no loud noise, no bright flash of light. The giant speakers emitted a deep, powerful thrum. It was a sound you felt more than heard, a vibration that went through the metal of the ship and into their bones. On the targeting screen, a visible wave of distorted air shot out from their ship. It was like heat haze on a summer road. It moved silently and quickly towards the Cathar scout. For a second, nothing happened. Jin's heart pounded. Had they failed? Was it not powerful enough? Then they saw it. The Cathar ship's energy shield flickered. It did not flash or spark. It simply wavered, like a reflection on water when you touch it. Then the shield vanished. It did not collapse. It was just gone. The strange wave touched the hull of the scout ship. The effect was slow and terrifying. The dark, hard metal of the hull did not explode. It began to change color. It turned from dark gray to a pale, ashy white. Then it began to crumble. It was like watching a sand sculpture in the wind. The outer layer of the ship dissolved into a fine powder that drifted away into space. The unmaking moved inward. The ship lost its shape. A wing simply faded into dust. Then the middle section, there was no fire, no screaming metal. There was only a profound, absolute silence. In less than 10 seconds, the entire Cathar scout ship was gone. Where a powerful alien warship had been, there was now only an expanding cloud of gray dust slowly drifting apart in the void. The silence on the bridge was absolute. The only sound was the low hum of their own ship's engine. Min was the first to speak, his voice a whisper. It worked. The atomic bonds, they just let go. Sue stared at the empty space on the screen. It's gone, she said, as if she could not believe it. There's no debris, nothing to hit us. It's just gone. Jin felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. They had not destroyed the ship. They had erased it. They had told the universe that the ship should not be there, and the universe had listened. Professor Lee put a hand on the console to steady herself. She looked pale. We have done it, she said. We have used the oldest knowledge to fight the newest power. General Park did not celebrate. He watched the cloud of dust on the screen, his eyes narrowed. He was not thinking about their victory. He was thinking about the enemy's reaction. Now, he said quietly, they know we are not primitive. Now the real game begins. Back on Earth, in the command ship of the Cathar fleet, a light blinked on a console. An alarm sounded, a soft chime that indicated a loss of contact. The Cathar officer checked the logs. Scout Ship 734 was no longer transmitting. Its last known location was near Mars. The officer reviewed the sensor data. There was no record of an energy weapon, no missile signature, no plasma discharge, no impact of any kind. One moment the ship was there. The next it was a cloud of microscopic particles. It was impossible. Their technology had no explanation for this. For the first time since arriving at Earth, the Cathar were confused. On the old human ship, the team watched their own sensors. They saw the Cathar fleet shift. They saw the motherships change their orientation. They were looking. They were searching. They know, Jin said. Yes, General Park replied. And now we send our message. The cloud of dust that was once a starship drifted, a silent monument in the dark. Inside the human ship, no one cheered. The air was heavy with what they had done. They had crossed a line. They were no longer hiding. They had thrown a stone at a giant, and now they waited for the giant to look down. General Park broke the silence. His voice was calm and firm. Now we talk. But we do not beg. We do not threaten. We explain. He looked at Professor Lee. This is your field now. You speak the language. You give the lesson. Professor Lee nodded. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady when she spoke. Jin, prepare a tight beam transmission. Aim it directly at the lead Cathar ship. Send only audio, no video. Let them listen. On the massive Cathar command ship, the silence was broken by a new alert, a communication. It was not a broad broadcast. It was a precise laser-tight beam, aimed directly at them. It was a show of skill. The message was audio only. The Cathar commander, a tall being known as an overseer, listened. The flat computer voice of the translator filled the bridge. People of the Cathar Imperium. It was a human voice, a female voice, old and calm. You assessed our technology. You looked at our ships and our weapons. You were correct. They are primitive. The overseer was still. Its many eyes focused on nothing. But you made a mistake, the voice continued. You only looked at our present. You did not look at our past. You thought our history was short. You were wrong. There was a pause. Then a sound filled the Cathar bridge. It was a pure, simple tone. It was the core resonance frequency, the foundation of their shield technology, the secret they thought no one else knew. The humans were playing it back to them, stripped of its power but perfect in its form. It was a whisper from a Stone Age tomb. It was a proof. The human voice returned, still calm, like a teacher correcting a student. You thought your science was beyond our comprehension. You were wrong. We have been studying the song of the universe since before we first stacked stone upon stone. This is not a declaration of war from our military. It is a final examination paper from our academy. We suggest you grade it carefully. The message ended. The silence on the Cathar bridge was absolute. The officers looked at each other. There was no protocol for this. They understood war. They understood surrender. They did not understand a lesson from a species they had called primitive. The overseer looked at the data from the scout ship's destruction again. No energy signature. No projectile, just dissolution. It matched the humans' claim. They had not used a weapon of force. They had used a weapon of understanding. To fight them would be illogical. They did not know the limits of this human knowledge. Could they unmake a mothership? Could they unmake a world? The risk was too great. The overseer made a decision. It was a decision born not of fear but of cold, new logic. On the human ship, the team watched their sensors. The massive Cathar motherships, which had hung in the sky for weeks, began to move. Their engines glowed with soft light. But they were not moving down. They were moving up. They were retreating to a higher, more distant orbit. A non-threatening position. Then a new message arrived. This time it was from the Cathar. It was a single word, translated into Korean. Re-evaluation. Jin let out a breath he did not know he was holding. Sue sat down heavily in her chair. Min leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. Professor Lee allowed herself a small, tired smile. General Park watched the screens, his arms crossed. He saw the ships pull back. He saw the shadow over Earth begin to shrink. "It is not over," he said. "They will watch us now. They will study us. But they will do it from a distance. They will talk before they shoot." He turned to the team. "You did not win a war. You started a conversation, and this time, we get to speak as equals." Weeks later, Jin walked across the university campus. The sky was blue and clear. The alien ships were still there, but they were small now, like faint stars in the daylight. They were quiet. He went to the museum in the city. He stood before the ancient dolmen, the very one whose resonance they had used. It was just a pile of big, rough stones. People walked past it, not knowing its power, not knowing that it had helped save the world. He thought about the people who built it. They had no computers. They had no spaceships. But they had listened to the world. They had understood something deep and true. The Cathar thought humanity's strength was in its technology. They were wrong. Humanity's strength was in its curiosity. It was in its memory. It was in the stubborn desire to learn, to understand, to build, and to pass knowledge down through the ages, from one generation to the next, even if that knowledge was written in stone. They thought we were primitive. They did not know that our greatest weapon was not a bomb, but a library. And we had just opened a book they never knew existed.